Why hasn't the Russian military in Ukraine collapsed? Think about it. At the beginning of this war, Ukraine stopped males between the ages of 18 and 60 leaving the country. We also saw them handing out weapons to civilians on the streets. So potentially, there are several million people, let's assume in Ukraine, that could potentially be in the military against the Russians. So what is it? We don't really hear any stats on the Ukrainian forces, the number of troops, their number of tanks, and their losses. All we hear about is the Russian losses. Every time a Russian tank is hit, a ship, a squad of men, that's all over YouTube. Presumably, Ukraine is taking no losses. But what is the size of the force that Russia is facing? The YouTube video I recently did about, it wasn't Putin who came up with the 72 hours, for the fall of Ukraine. It was actually our own General Miley of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But the Times Radio News on YouTube, the guy was saying how Ukraine is the second largest country in Europe, some 40 million people. And Russia invaded into that with some 200,000 troops? That's less than the number of troops that were in the German 6th Army at Stalingrad in World War II. The 6th Army had some 300,000 men, and then another couple of 100,000, I believe, with their allies that were on their flanks. Romanians, I believe, might have some of them. I'm not sure right now. But let's say maybe 500,000. Russia right now in Ukraine has 200,000 men? Less. They've lost 25,000 of them, presumably. So they went into Ukraine with basically their peacetime army. It's not mobilized for war. I mean, if Russia mobilized, they could come up with, I'm sure, several million, men, for their military. But they haven't done that yet by declaring war. The war would call it mobilization. I don't think that Putin can mobilize the country on a special military operation. That's probably why he's using that phrase. So Russia's in there with a relatively small force, less than what the Germans had at Stalingrad. How many troops does Ukraine have? It's got to be 1 million, 10 million, with all the men not being able to leave. I mean, yeah, you could maybe say they don't have 10 million rifles for them all, but still, they have that many forces ready to go. And they're not trained, they're conscripts too, but the point is 10 million, conscripts can overwhelm quite a lot. Okay, but Ukraine, hey, my dog's moving around now on the couch with me. So I guess my point here also is if Ukraine actually has a very substantial number of forces, troops, Russia must be doing one hell of a job just to stay where it has and made what accomplishments it has and why it hasn't completely collapsed and been driven out of Ukraine completely yet. One hell of a job. Because whatever Russia has in Ukraine, the Ukraine forces must have many times more. Okay. Plus, they have NATO help coming in now with supplies and equipment. All right. Just a thought.